Alright. Hello. This is my restoration project. Before I get started, I just want to mention the pictures that I've used are not of this particular site. They're more just creative, interesting pictures. Um, yeah. All right. So the site that I focused on is our land that we live on here in Massachusetts. It's situated on 3 acres, and it's degraded for a few reasons. But one being it was maintained as a dairy pasture for a number of years before we moved on, and the land practices were not the best. Um, Additionally, we have a number of pine trees that border the outside and drop their needles, making the soil um, just in very acidic and just not able to grow that much. Um, so the idea is we want to restore the land with a variety of trees, and we want to bring the pH to a more neutral level. And we're going to do that by introducing hardwood and fruit trees. Um, and so this is the kind of the initial design plan. Um, I did lay out a number of goals or sort of different takes on a similar goal, just to um, approach it with different perspectives. But the main gist of it is we want perennials to create a more stable and ecologically diverse environment. Um, yeah, I'll get more into kind of there's some wildlife that's present now, but we'd like to improve the wildlife. Given where we're located, which again in Massachusetts, we're in a suburban neighborhood, so and we live on quite a busy road. So there are some challenges involved in, um, just in terms of like a continuous stream of pollution or noise pollution. And so, we can't introduce all wildlife, but it might be constrained to small mammals and birds and things of that nature. Um, some of the stresses and drivers, which I'd start to get into in the last slide, uh, includes so the stressors include um, pine trees, the way the pine trees are set up. And don't get me wrong, pine trees are wonderful trees, but in considering the entire plan and where we wish to go moving forward, pine trees just create challenges because they block the sun from reaching the yard most of the day. And so, to encourage the growth of other plants and trees, just the pine trees are a consideration, and they're a stressor. Some of the other stressors include the busy road I mentioned. There's a decent amount of foot traffic. There are dogs in the property. This land has been maintained as a yard for a number of years. It went from a pasture, a dairy pasture, to just a yard. So it's not very ecologically diverse, and with the activity that the yard has seen, it's just kind of been beaten down, I guess. And so the drivers that I consider include the climatic zone of the location. What trees are we able to grow specifically in this region? What's the soil type, the hydrology, and other significant land features? Um, it's important to mention that we are located next to a wetland. However, the wetland, though most of it has been protected, there had been kind of a house that like the driveway filled in and cut off right in the middle of the wetland. So it's important to consider the wetland, even though our project will not. Um, it's not too massive of a project and won't interfere with the wetland. The wetland's already been kind of interfered in its kind of most stable state. right, so the gold. Yep. So as I mentioned, we want just to bring more trees and perennials onto the land, um, and bringing perennials. Are, perennials are very important because they build the soil structure, which does a lot. It makes for a more ecologically diverse soil structure, including mycorrhizal fungi and um, additionally, that so there's below ground improvement, and then there's above ground improvement, and and some of that would look like more food for pollinators, habitat for birds and small mammals, and so essentially we want to just create like well-rounded functionality of this land. The yard was great for humans, or for like the anthropomorphic or yeah, that's use, but these days because the art isn't really used anymore, it'd be nice to restore and bring the land to a just I don't know to make it accessible and usable by other species. Um, Additionally, trees and perennials are in building the soil structure. Um, they do a better job of retaining water. We get a lot of rainfall here, especially in the spring. So this time of year. So it's just in general, I think having trees is very good. I just Yeah, so I mentioned we right now the land has been maintained as a yard, and um, I think we want to move to trees because I just don't think grass when it's just regularly cut um, does a lot for many other species, um, and we want to create just a richer environment for other species. So um, we're going to create we're going to make this land a little more valuable for other creatures, but we're not just going to let it grow wild. I think what we're considering is going to be a semi-managed area. So, and this is to optimize growth and to preserve human useful species. So, as I'll mention down the line, we want to introduce some hardwood trees, but we also are thinking of introducing some fruit and nut trees. And the fruit and nut trees will obviously provide food for humans, but also food for many other creatures. And so, yeah, so I think um, that's where we're heading. We want to neutralize the pH of the yard, and we want to just, as I've said, we want to create better habitat for birds and small mammals. So SWOTC, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and constraints. Some of the strengths: plenty of space, decent soil, which there's so it's not the worst soil, but it's also not the best, and that's why again beaten down. Um, so it's a good starting point. We're the owner of the property, so that's good. We can use the land how we please. Um, it's the generally flat topography, frequent rainfall year round, lots of bird activity, minimally developed wetland property. So those are good things. The wetland, I think, is just a good thing because it provides a lot of services for a lot of species. Some of the weaknesses include soil chemistry, water quality is unknown, hazardous waste unknown. We're located near a transfer station, about half a mile, so that might play a role in having some negative impact. We live on a busy street, so besides birds and some small mammals, there's just a threat to other species. There's no wild corridors, so though we will occasionally see deer in the neighboring property, we just there is an opportunity or room for any larger mammals on this property. Um, Another weakness, but it's just the way it is. There's a house, a driveway, and patio, and that just restricts the space that we can improve. And that's just, I'm grateful for the house, of course, and this is our property. But you just, when considering um, restoring land and creating a home for other creatures, it makes you wonder, like, how much space, or what size house do we want, or what does the driveway look like, and but we can't just erase all of this right now, so we're working with what we have. um, I think you kind of got to just do the best you can given what you have, and little steps and efforts over time will make the biggest difference. The opportunities, there are opportunities for creativity and freedom to use the imagination. There's space to build, plant, and develop. I mean environmental development. Um, the land, fortunately, besides some of the pine trees on the outer border of the property, the land is just at an early successional growth, or the earliest successional. It's just a yard, so it allows. Fortunately, we don't have to cut that much down, so we're starting with something that's ready to go. Some of the constraints, which there aren't really many, but what I just thought about was the legal constraints, considerations for the wetland, just the amount of space, because I mentioned the house and the driveway, and there's the property line, and the neighbors, the consideration of the neighbors. But this is gonna stay in our own yard. It's not gonna really affect the neighbors. But I'll get into that in terms of stakeholders. Um, which, yeah, I'll move to right now. The stakeholders that I immediately identified include the neighbors, the immediate family, which my parents, my sibling, were the property. My parents are the property owners. The town council, I considered, and folks passing by on the sidewalk. There is a sidewalk right that goes by our house. The wildlife, and lots of the wildlife, and these are all stakeholders, but they don't. Mainly, I think it's the property owners, my family, who will really be most affected by the plan, and so. But fortunately, everyone's in agreement with this. But I've focalized kind of these ideas, and we've come together as family and discussed. Just mentioning the neighbors again. The neighbors, this is all going to be restricted or limited to kind of our property. This will be communicated very transparently to everyone, including our neighbors, and so they'll be aware of what's going on. But it won't. If anything, it's just going to make the space more aesthetically pleasing, I think, because it will be semi-managed, and there's something attractive, I think, about a healthy environmental ecosystem. So, communication is very important with the family, communication with neighbors, and consideration for the laws of the town, the state, and the nation. But, we're just planting trees, so it's not severe. I just, in terms of, I'm going to go back to some of the drivers that will, these are just things that we can't necessarily change. It includes the geology, the hydrology, how much rainfall, the climate, the soil type, the day length, and like how many sunny days are there a year. Those are all things that will affect what trees are successful. But, fortunately, we're just in a temperate area, and there's a lot of room for opportunity. So, all right. The idea here is the trees introduced to this site will improve the natural community and plentiful in various ways. The soil structure and nutrient balance will be improved. And I mentioned water retention. So in consideration as we get into the action plan, I considered 4 possible or potential outcomes. It's important because there's always unpredictabilities, and I've been told this idea that we plan for at least 50% or half of what we plan for will happen, and then you should expect 50% to kind of be out of your control and unpredictable. And so that's how we'll approach this. And so some of the ideas I have how the plan will carry out. The trees will settle and grow up. For this, the first idea, the trees will settle and grow up to be strong and healthy as planned. Soil aspects change. It's desired and effective agroforestry plan can be implemented. That's a good option or a good outcome. Another option, trees do not settle, because the land is too degraded. That'll just require greater efforts or land transformations to allow for better growth. Another unfortunate option would be the site owner changes and the new owner wants something different with the land. If that isn't, we don't have no plans of leaving, but we could maybe write this into the land if that is something we're concerned about. But I don't think it's going to happen. And then lastly, with regards to climate change, we have to consider the species. And so the species we plant today may not survive tomorrow because of the warming weather. And so that's something that's important in thinking of long-term resilience for tree species that are prepared to embrace the warming climate. So those are 4 outcomes. But ideally, as mentioned, we'll plant some trees and species, and they will settle. And that'll be the way it unfolds. But we always, I think, need to expect unforeseen circumstances. So we're going to select, moving into the action plan, we're going to select native trees from the area, mainly of the hardwood and deciduous type. And I should highlight oak and maple, or emphasize oak and maple grow quite well here. So we'll probably introduce oak and maple. We're going to steer away from the softwood variety because we're trying to move a lot of the native forest types around this area to mimic neighboring forest areas. There's a lot of deciduous hardwood forests, and so we want to introduce oak and maple and things of that nature. But as I mentioned before, we also want fruit and nut trees, and so that we're going to have a combination given whatever we can kind of squeeze into the 3 acres of land. But having the fruit and nut trees is really important because it'll provide fruit for us and for for many other species. So the trees will have to, when we plant them, which we'll try to start some of the trees from seed, but there is difficulty or challenges in that. So we can also, there are some really wonderful nurseries around here, and so we're thinking of buying young seedlings, which will have a cost, but the cost will be reduced by buying very young seedlings. And we'll have to take care of the trees early on when they're small and delicate, but the hope is over time, as the trees mature, they won't require as much maintenance. In fact, we want to be able to let them kind of grow off on their own. The only trees that will require more attention will be the fruit and nut trees. Specifically the fruit trees, I don't know a whole lot about nut trees at this point, but they're going to require more of like a semi-management, including pruning, yearly pruning, and and it doesn't have to happen. We don't have to prune. It's more of like we want to prune to maximize the productivity of the fruit trees, but the apples could be pears and nut trees could be left to grow, and they would survive just wonderfully. But it's just pruning helps the trees a lot as well. So and as I mentioned, so we have the acidic soil, but as the variety of new trees we introduce mature, they're going to affect the soil type and make the soil more appropriate to their, make the soil more suitable to their needs. Like for example, the pine tree makes the soil more acidic, which is what the pine's like. And so the other deciduous trees that drop leaves, when the leaves break down, the land just becomes optimal, or the soil becomes optimal for those types of trees, and that the soil will change over time, and this ecosystem will become just a more resilient and self-sustaining ecosystem, which is what we ideally want. I just tried to monitor and evaluating. So because this is our backyard, we're going to be inclined to just, we can't help but pay attention to what's happening. We come into this yard every day, and we look out the window and we interact with the land. So, we're gonna see how things are doing. The best in the informal sense. Formally, we're gonna collect data, and we're gonna just, we're gonna see and record the health of the trees over time, over the years. We're going to conduct soil quality surveys over, annually, and this check-in will ensure that there is progress being made. But we will record observations and track the progress over time. Excuse me. This will be an adaptive management plan, which, in my opinion, so it's going to be an adaptive management plan, meaning there's room for flexibility if things need to change. In our evaluation or monitoring and evaluations, we're going to get a good sense of what species are thriving and are doing quite well here, and which species are not doing well, and we can change what we're doing to the land, or what we're adding or taking away from the land, just by kind of responding to those things. The whole family is in on this plan, and so we're going to be open to changes as whatever. There's sort of a democratic circle or coming up of ideas. And so, excuse me one second, but so I'm really, I'm most interested in this plan. So I'm really going to be in charge of collecting this data, and monitoring this. But, as I said, the whole family will be in on this, but I'll make sure that the information gets stored away and kept in a record, using some Excel documents. And so it's really up to me to keep this, and the records are useful just in terms of evaluating progress and noting the things that are working and not working. And success on this small piece of land, it's really just seeing the trees that we introduce, just kind of growing up and growing old and establishing themselves. And and part of our monitoring, we're going to keep track of the birds and all the species that come onto the land. That's something that I enjoy paying attention to. I think just over time we've begun to realize that we have this little piece of land that can be changed and improved. It's been wonderful, I guess, for our childhood to be able to play sports and whatever in the yard. But as we all grow older and mature, and become aware of, I guess, I don't know, providing something for other species and other forms of life, we want to make changes on the piece of land if we can, and we can. And so creating this self-sustaining ecosystem would be really cool, especially in this little neighborhood, or in this suburban town, because everybody just kind of maintains a yard, and we want to just do something interesting and different and show people that create this little oasis. Excuse me, that's my dog right next to me. But I think success will just be as the trees grow older and as we continue to just watch the trees grow and establish themselves. And um, that's just that's really what we're hoping to do here. Um, and that's it. Thank you. I really appreciate it, you watching this, and I know this is kind of this is a restoration plan of a smaller type. It's not like a big mining operation that needs to be fixed up, but um, it points to the fact that like there are so many, I think, ways of restoring and making the land better. Where it's not just about the humans, but it's about everyone. So, yeah, thank you very much, and yeah, be well.